So hello. I'm going to talk a little bit about my plans for the documentation over the next 30 years or so. If you have any feedback on anything I say, if you wouldn't mind just making notes on it for now, and then I'll take questions and comments after I've been through everything. Don't panic about anything you see. I'm not getting rid of anything. I'm not going to make any major changes without discussing it with everyone first. I'm still so new to APL that I don't know what experienced APLers like to have available in terms of documentation. So I will go through my preliminary ideas. Any feedback, really gratefully received. So I thought what I would cover first of all is a little bit about where I'm coming from, what my background is, so that you can see the level to talk to me at. I've only been doing APL for 6 months and a day. So if you come to me with lots of suggestions in APL terms, I might look at you with a very blank face. I'll go through the changes that I'm proposing to make short term and then slightly longer term, and then a balloon debate, which may not be a familiar term to all of you. The concept of a balloon debate is lots of things, where you imagine this as lots of people in a hot air balloon basket, the balloon's going down, you have to throw them overboard until only one is left. So the idea of a balloon debate is we go through various suggestions, reject some, say that you like other ones. This will not set anything in concrete. This is just so that I can see where we're at with everything. So a little bit about me then. By education, I'm an engineer. For my bachelor's degree, I did a considerable amount of work using Pascal. It's going back a few years now. And following that, I worked using Fortran, so my PhD thesis was all written in Fortran. And if I'd known about APL then, that would have saved me time and reams of paper. After finally leaving education, I moved into becoming a technical author, and prior to coming to Dyalog, I had 12.5 years experience as a technical author in a couple of different telecommunication companies. While the technical authoring was quite interesting there, telecommunications really wasn't. So I'm really happy to be doing something exciting again. Right, so moving on to my short-term plans for the documentation at Dyalog. Some of the guides seemed to be a little covered quite a lot of material that maybe wasn't all necessary by the same people. It might be accessed by different people at different times, and therefore it seems logical to split it. Now, I should say at this point, these aren't all suggestions that I have yet run by management. So some of these may be shot down, I apologise. But things like the installation and the user guide, having those two in one document didn't seem logical to me. You install something at the beginning, then you're done with that, and then you move on to using it. It's not necessarily the same person doing those two things. So to me, it seems logical to split that into 2 documents. And same with some of these other ones. Salt and user commands, Dan's babies, there was documentation for them. Trying to get salt and user commands to work, I realised that Dan's intelligence is maybe a little bit higher than mine, and some of the inbuilt assumptions just weren't there for me, so I'm completely rewriting those ones. Some documents for new software. The plan, certainly for 14.0 at least, is that all the existing Dyalog documentation will continue to be maintained by Pete Donnelly, and I will concentrate on writing some of the new documents for new products that are coming in, or maybe filling in some of the gaps that are there at the moment. There's one document I've written so far in 6.5 months. That's currently up on the website for the Raspberry Pi guide, but if you have a look at that, you can see what my style of documentation is like. So any feedback you have on that, feel free to throw it my way. The one thing I really noticed that was missing was documentation for new starters. All the documentation that is currently on the Dyalog site assumes a certain level of comprehension that coming in as a complete newbie, I didn't have. There was very little there that said, okay, when you're starting out, this is what a workspace is. It just launched into, when you're setting up namespaces in your workspace. So something I've been working on is a starter guide. And that also brings me back to the competition that's in the program. On the very last page of the program, you will see there is a competition for everyone to design a poster to get people interested in APL. Just an A4 size thing that can be our introduction to APL, something that you'll see on the street and think, oh, cool, I must know more about that. So challenge laid down before all of you. Please, please, please pass that out to people. Put in as many entries as you like. I really want something to try and grab people, and I don't yet have the knowledge to do that, so go for it. Something else I'm putting in that isn't there at the moment and isn't to do with new technology that's coming in for 14 are what I've called cheat sheets and the reference card. So the reference card that you all received in your bags, that's what we're kind of internally referring to as the basic reference card. A longer term plan is a slightly more advanced booklet. So maybe 20-page spiral bound so that you can open it flat on your desks and things that can summarize some of the more complex ideas. Like Quad NA that was mentioned earlier, it might be quite nice to actually have some of that set out and so that it's there all the time to be referred to. So if there's anything you think would be useful in that context, let me know. Again, cheat sheets are something I've been putting together for 14.0, and they're 1 or 2 sides of A4. I can show you the sort of thing I have in mind there. So they are just 1 or 2 page summaries that will just list the syntax. They're not tutorials, so they're not trying to teach you anything. They are just summaries. So that's all it is, just 1 page summary showing the sort of thing that you should know but might need a little prompt on. So yeah, list of all the idioms that are valid, that sort of thing. None of it is not elsewhere in the documentation. Longer term, the documentation as it currently stands is not a terribly cohesive document set. Understandably, it's been written by lots of different people. Some of it was written for 12.0, the software hasn't changed, and therefore the document hasn't changed, the templates are all out of date. It's a bit of a mismatch. So one of my aims is to get everything updated at every release, even if the software hasn't changed, but get a cohesive look and feel across the whole documentation set. The coverage of the documents it's been a tad erratic. There is a lot in there, and they're very technically brilliant, I must say. But the coverage can have gaps in it, so something I would like to do is fill in the gaps as I spot them. It is such a vast array of stuff in APL that I won't spot all of them. There's no way I possibly can. So if you notice a gap, let me know, and then I can prioritize filling in the stuff that is useful to you over spending ages filling in what I think is useful but actually isn't really in the real world. Standardizing on terminology. Yes, I'm afraid I'm a little OCD in this area. I don't like the same thing being referred to by 5 different names in 5 different documents. I found that very confusing. So not only will functions and operators have a standardized set of names, but even things like defins. We've had great discussions about this, and defins should always be referred to in the same way. It's lowercase d, lowercase f, lowercase n, no hyphen. So that sort of thing. I'm proposing a glossary that will go out with some of these terms in it. And again, that's linked to the starter documentation. I found I was coming across lots of terms and writing them on a sheet of paper and then going and saying to someone, what's this, what's this, what's this? So a glossary, and hopefully the spellings and the terms used in that will filter right through the whole documentation set. Yes, I've said that one. The formats that documents are currently delivered in, there's a lot of PDFs, there's online help, and that's pretty much it. If you have a format that you would like to see things delivered in, tell us. I'm looking at EPUB at the moment, I'm looking at whether a wiki, even one that has user contributions on it, anything like that that you think would be a good thing. If you've always got your mobile phone propped by the desk with something on the screen or you're trying to read PDFs on it and that's not working for you, let me know. If we can get something that works on an iPad or an Android and that would be useful to you, if you think that's a handy thing to have, let me know. Because PDFs are great when you're beginning. It's lovely to be able to print something out and scribble on it. And with certain types of documents, that's still very helpful. For things like the language reference, which is just explaining every single function, maybe that's more useful to have as an app so that you can just have your iPad propped up and pull up the app and just put in the function you want and see the information there. Again, I don't know how people use APL in the real world, so any feedback you can give me on what would be helpful to you, please tell me. Some feedback I've had already is that it would be quite useful to have documents in different colours. So I've been told that Unix users might like to see documents in white text on a black background, so that they're not suddenly dazzled by them, and that's easy. So if you have that sort of thing that would make your lives better, please just tell me. So at 13.2, the documents were delivered as PDFs, CHUMs, and they were available to print from Lulu. For 14.0, it's pretty much unchanged. It will be PDFs and CHUMs again, zip files, including this white text on a black background that I mentioned before. Possibly also in printed format. I'm still looking into that, but it wouldn't be with Lulu. It might be done through Amazon. But yes, these longer term plans. Do people know there are videos on YouTube? Dan has done a whole load, John Scholes has done some, but there are tutorials available on YouTube already. But if there is something in the docs that you think, well, it's all very well having it written down here, but can't we see a demonstration of how to install this, what it's like when it's working properly? It's perfectly feasible, I just need to know. Hopefully you're all familiar with the current documentation website. It lists all the documents under different groups, and you can go and you click on the title and then you can download it. I found that a little bit frustrating. I wanted to know, what's the document about? Am I the one who should be reading it? Can't I just download all of these in one go? Now, it has been mentioned a few times over the course of the conference so far that we are getting a new website for the whole of Dyalog. And in line with that, I thought that was a great opportunity to redesign the documentation website. Again, this is still all proposed. Gitter has not seen it. This is the template that the entire new document site uses. So the colours and things, that is going to be consistent across everything. It's the content I'd like you to look at now. Don't panic at any of the text. This is something I was just working through. I'm not saying anything in particular here. But what I have tried to do on here is under each document, I have tried to put, just when you click on the document, a brief description of what that document's about, who the intended audience is, what sort of knowledge is assumed within that document. Because that is something that I would have found useful, so I'm kind of hoping other people would too. And then a link to the PDF so that you can download it. If it's also available in a different format, there's a link to it in that other format as well. And a couple of links at the top so that you can hide or display all the descriptions for every document. Down towards the bottom, there's all the cheat sheets and things. Down towards the bottoms there are as a zip file directory so that you can download everything all in one go, or you can download it all in a slightly different format, just with different pagination, different colouring, whatever you've suggested that you would like to see in a zip file. And all the other releases, that will still be there as well. So that's my initial thoughts for the documentation site. I would welcome feedback on that one as well. So the things I would like your feedback on. Should the documents be platform specific or multi-platform? There's a real mixture at the moment. Unix and Windows have separate installation instructions. The language reference guide is very Windows-centric and then says at the bottom, sort of, if you're doing this in Unix, then this is what's different. Would it be better just to have all the common material in one document and then say for Windows, here is everything, for Unix, here is everything? Would you like to see a complete set of Windows documentation and then a separate guide that just says, if you're on Unix, here are all the differences? Let me know. Should the documents be release specific? If you download a set of 14.0, do you only care about 14.0? Again, at the moment, the documents will say, you know, blah, 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 this was the case until 12.1, then this took over, and now we do this. Is that something that's relevant to you every day? Would you like to see all that legacy information extracted, maybe into an online application where you could say, going between this release and this release, what are the differences? Do you prefer lots of documents that are very, very specific? So maybe a document on component files, a document on native files, a document on this, that, and the other? Or do you prefer great big documents that say, here's APL? Is there a compromise between those two? Edition specific as well, similar to the platform specific. Again, they go through at the moment and they say, this is how you do it, this is how you do it, this is how you do it. Ooh, classic, one line. Is that working for everyone? Would you rather the documents were specifically concentrating on one version there? Colour schemes. Now, my initial thoughts when I saw the documents, especially the online versions, were the blue that's used for all the APL text. I kept wanting to click on it because it looks like a hyperlink. So I thought, oh, well, let's change this. What's the next obvious colour? Let's go with a sort of reddy colour. But of course, that's used in errors. So what are your thoughts? What colours do you find easy to see on the screen? Is it only me that sees blue as a hyperlink and therefore has a bit of an issue? If you're all happy with it, I'll leave it as it is. If not, I can change it. The deliverable formats that you want to see. Get back to me on these. I really genuinely want to know, because it's not a problem to do them if you tell me. If you're going to print a document and you're going to print it from the PDF, is the font size okay? I'm aware that some people's eyes are not as good as others, and if the font is too small, it's fine if you're reading it on the screen, you can just enlarge it. But if you would like large print versions of documents to print, tell me. Are there any documents you would like to see that aren't there at the moment? I mean, I've had several suggestions, maybe an optimization guide, that sort of thing. Something that can help point you, some of the tips that Eugene gave us yesterday, that sort of thing. This really is all for you. I mean, if you didn't need documentation, I wouldn't have a job, so please keep me in employment and tell me what you actually want. The surveys that came out with your registration packs, and there are some spare ones at the front desk, please complete them. There's a box on the desk there to put them in. But without your feedback, I can only take the route that I think is the best one, and I am not an experienced APLer. Email me. My email address, Fiona@Dyalog, or docs@Dyalog. They both come just to me at the moment. Please, any feedback you give me, I will respond. I will let you know what decision was being made on that, how your input has contributed to it. And don't just comment on the docs. I would actually be really interested to know your feedback on this year. The programme, there's a few changes I've made to the programme, the website for the conference, just the timetable and things that were on there. And the prerequisites page, was it useful having all the prerequisites for workshops in advance, or was that just annoying? All that sort of thing, please let me know. Any questions? Any feedback you want to provide now?
Hello.
Hi.
Okay. My personal opinion is that Dyalog has come to a stage where we do need detailed documents that are very specific. And at the same time, we also need what is currently available. So there's this duality where things like user commands or salt, we do need to go into detail. So there's a need for documents. So we don't want to open up a huge big tome to get in there. So there's a dual need.
Right.
What's existing and also very specialized documents on that subject.
Yeah, thank you.
So documentation is a very big thing for me, so I hope you'll let me maybe. I have three things that I think are all related to one another regarding documentation. And one of them is source formats. I like to be able to access documentation and produce whatever I want from it for the needs. So something like XML docbook formats for the documentation to allow me to do whatever I want to get it into a customized format whenever I need. Maybe having a web interface that allows me to pick and choose, customize my docs, and then generate them. And in relation to that, something like a topic-based documentation where there's a whole host of independently written topics so that I can then compose a custom set of documentation based just on that. So only pick and choose the documentation that I want. So for instance,
that's more feasible than the first option, I think.
Yeah, well, the two are related because the docbook XML format lets me build my own style sheets and transformations based on topics to get a document that I know is pretty reliable, but only has the information that I want in it, for example, for a class or something like this. And tied into all of that, maybe, I don't know how the rest of the people, but I've always wanted the ability to, I don't like wikis for user-based feedback for I hate them a lot, but having like a GitHub-style place where I can sort of patch the source code and keep my own version of the source docs, and then maybe push them upstream if you guys like them or not. And that way of leveraging additional changes, those sort of three things I think work together. And I would love to see that. I know that that's a lot of work, but it would make
Leave it with
my
me.
documentation effort a lot
Short term,
easier.
no, but leave it with me.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone.